Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm your co-host, Kevin, K-Daddy from Dirty South, the ATL, Hotlanta, Georgia. I'm a post-production master, filmmaker, and horror nerd.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
And I'm your co-host, John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and fright pals? Today is a special episode where we've invited guests to come onto the show and tell their personal ghost stories. Join us around our virtual campfire and prepare to be chilled to the bone. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Cinematic, captivating, terrifying, and intense. Trap 2021 will return live May 21st through the 23rd. New categories, new prizes, and still no entry fee. Visit trapfilmfestival.com for more information.
And we are back. Welcome again, everybody. Like Ashley said, today we have a few special guests. And today we're going to start with somebody near and dear to my heart, my own child, Lila Kelley. Here she is.
Welcome, Lila.
Hello, how's it going?
Hello.
Hello, welcome to our show. We're so glad to have you on.
Thank you, long-time listener, first-time guest.
I think it's been about 3 years since I've actually seen you in person, Lai.
I know, it's been a long time.
Anytime we get with Lila is a treat. Okay, so Lila, we're talking about ghost stories today, and you are on because you have some to share. So where would you like to get started? This is your time.
John being my dad. Weird saying John, but hi, John.
Hi.
Going around and like investigating parks and our haunted houses and things like that were always a big part of growing up, I guess I could say. One of the local parks here in town, we would go out at night and take our recorders and just walk around the parks and see if we could get anything. And that's kind of where I remember my interest in paranormal investigating, ghost hunting, whatever you want to call it. I remember that's where it started. And yeah, that was a pretty big influence.
How old were you when you first started joining John on like these paranormal
That's
investigations?
a very good question.
Like 9?
Yeah, like 9
8
or
or 9.
10. Yeah. It was really young. But yeah, I remember that was kind of where it kick-started, and hearing, sounds at night, whatever, bumps in the night, being like not very scared of it. I don't know, the sense is getting away from me, but not being very scared of hearing noises at night or hearing footsteps and things like that. But when I started to grow up and kind of come into my own around middle school, I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, is when it started freaking me out, hearing, different noises or even seeing things. So there was a period in time where I actually thought that I was going crazy, and I didn't know what was going on because I would see figures in the house, or I would hear sounds, I would hear voices, I would hear whole sentences just to me. And that wasn't something that I had heard before. Even on the recorders growing up, going to the parks or anything like that, it was never anything that clear. And I remember thinking that there were people in our apartment and there was nobody around. And so it was very scary at that time. But I didn't really know what to make of that. And I, for some reason, didn't think it was anything paranormal. I thought it was just all in my head, which was not a good time.
I'm going to jump in. So I remember, and I know this is her story, but I remember getting a phone call from her mom because at first when she started hearing the voices and stuff, she thought that it was their neighbors, and their neighbors were below them. They lived on the 3rd floor. So they didn't have any neighbors that were super close to him. And I remember you had Googled a bunch of stuff and thought you had schizophrenia.
I do remember that.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And I'll just let you go.
Poor choices. Don't Google symptoms. Moral of the story here. Bad idea. But I thought I was going crazy because this was at the time where I would walk home from school because my school was in a close enough range. And I'd come home, I'd go in my room, and I'd set my backpack down, and I'd hear people talking to me. And I was the only one home if my mom wasn't home. And it's very unsettling to hear people when you know that you're by yourself. And so that's why, because it was so clear that I thought that I was going crazy. And I don't remember, at this point, because this was years ago, what the person was saying. But I also remember there was one point that I heard arguing and yelling. So I got angry and I was like, stop talking. Like, I just screamed it out. And then I heard behind me a voice saying, okay. And I turned around. Obviously, there's nobody there.
Oh, no.
And freaking out about it because I thought that this was a muffled voice coming from the next door neighbor, and there was no next door neighbor. And all of a sudden now I'm hearing this right next to me. Terrifying. And I was home alone a little bit in that age. So it was like, all right, if I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with it solo, which was not a good time. And so I was not a part of the paranormal investigation team at that time because I was still quite young. But the group that Dad, John, was in had a lovely psychic, and I remember talking with her about it, and she was like, oh yeah, that's your little spirit guide, that's Amanda. Just this little person that kind of hangs out with you, kind of leans on you. That's how I found out that I had a spirit guide. And so that's who this was, because it was just a little girl that I would hear all of the time. And I still never found out who was arguing that I heard or what that story was. But the majority of the time, it was this little girl. And yeah, her name was Amanda, and she was sweet. She didn't mean any harm. She was just kind of there to be there and support me and whatever that meant at the time. And I think it was needed because I think it really helped me dive into the world of like paranormal investigating or looking into ghost stories, things like that. That was a good kickstart. And I think it was just, some good moral support from the beyond.
So when did you notice Amanda was no longer present? Or is she still there?
It faded out. I think as I was growing up, I heard less and less from her. So when I was first experiencing this, seeing a figure in my house or hearing voices right beside me, I was probably like, 7th, 8th grade. I was probably like 12 or 13 at the time. And so I think going through the transitional period of childhood to being a teenager, I think that that's what she was there for. And as we moved around, because we moved around quite a bit during that time into a new apartment, I started noticing her less and less. And I don't know what the tipping point was. I don't know when she stopped being around, but I think it was just she was there to help me get a grip on growing up, if I'm being honest. I think that played a big part.
As you've gone through different transitional ages, have you had reoccurring supernatural paranormal experiences or encounters? Do you notice that heightens between different developmental transitions?
Maybe not as distinctly as having Amanda around. I couldn't tell you that I've had any other spirit guide or anyone else as I was going from being a teenager into being an adult or anything like that. But it's more so now I feel more comfortable and more confident in myself that I am not so scared anymore the way that I was then. And so now I'm very much more open about going and checking out these haunted places and doing investigations, and I love it and I love talking about it. And I was kind of the weird kid in high school because I would mention that I'm a part of this paranormal team and we do this, and we when we went to Jerome, Arizona a couple years back, this was right before I graduated high school. I actually did this massive project on Jerome where I actually hosted interviews with John and with Kevin. I don't know if you remember that, Kevin, but
No, I do.
Good times, yeah. And I remember I was kind of like the weird kid for wanting to make a little podcast about Jerome, Arizona. But a lot of people came up to me with questions after that. They're like, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. I love it. You're my kind of person.
Yeah.
So people commonly hear things or like their experiences with paranormal activity tends to be hearing things, whether it's footsteps or things slamming. Less common is like hearing voices, but even less common is seeing figures, like actually seeing the people. So I'm curious, you said you had seen some of the different figures. How did those present to you? Was it like shadows or was it like full blown, I am seeing a person there that's not supposed to be there?
For me, it was more like a light contrast. Like it would be shadows, but like with light around. And it was never very close. It would be sort of at a distance. And maybe that was just like a comfort thing. Like if that was Amanda, maybe she wasn't super comfortable with me. So she kind of stayed back, or maybe she thought that I would be scared. So, keeping our distance. But the way that I would see figures, whatever you want to call them, was more of just there's something off about the lighting. And that looks like a person, but I can't see details.
Well, it's like when a person stands, in a doorway and the hallway light is on and you see the light around them, but just their silhouette, their figure, because they're backlit. So that's almost like what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, I would say that that's a pretty good description of it.
I would say I've known you for years, and your experience with paranormal investigating. Do you have a favorite place that you've ever investigated?
I'm gonna say Jerome. The experience with the REM pod that you guys were just gonna leave me to not. Okay, I'll get into the story, but you guys were just gonna leave me and not let me experience the REM pod going off, and I'm still salty about it.
That was my fault, and I apologize.
And so, the story behind that is we were investigating the Jerome Grand, and we were in a double room. So there was like the closet and the bathroom separating these two rooms in the middle, and you had the two, beds on either side and in their respective rooms. We're testing out this little theory that if someone is sitting with their headphones attached to a spirit box and the people around them are asking questions, that the person listening to the spirit box is just going to say whatever they're hearing coming through, so they can hear the static of the spirit box, and if they hear a yes come through, the person listening is just going to say yes, but they don't know what the question was. They just know the answer. And I remember I was sitting in the corner facing the wall. I had my eyes closed and I was listening to the spirit box, and I was trying to just focus on whatever I was going to hear. I didn't want to miss anything. And the REM pod was going off behind us, and I didn't know about it because I'm hearing static come through the headphones and I don't hear anything else. And while everybody else in the room is freaking out and so excited about this REM pod going off, which I had never seen before, nobody thought to like tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, turn around, look at this, until it had almost stopped going off and I just saw the like last little bit of the lights going off on the antenna. I was so angry.
And we have it on video because that was part of the thing that we were recording for the documentary. So.
I remember everybody was just so like in awe about it that like nothing else was existing except for like, what is going on?
And the best part about that is Kevin was sitting next to it on the floor, also recording it on his phone. And so when it went off, all four of the lights were going off, which has never happened before in my investigating at all. And again, Kevin was sitting right next to it. And so the funny thing is he was recording it on his phone. And when you see his video, you see his phone shake because it scared the shit out of him so bad that I was laughing about that while we were there and totally forgot she was listening to everything. And I was like, oh, wait, I should probably let her know. And like she said, it was like almost too late.
The absolute audacity that you guys had to just leave me sit there staring at a wall while you were all so excited about this thing going off. I saw the end of it. I saw it go off a little bit, but it's not the same.
I apologize.
Apology accepted. But I'd have to say that was probably my favorite experience, even though like I caught the end. But just sitting there and like being present, like listening to a spirit box go off, not knowing what's going on around you, just focusing on the static, just focusing on if you hear any voices come through, just repeating that. I don't know, it felt really cool because it was just kind of, this is what I have going on and I don't care what's going on behind me, even though I did afterwards. But
I like that you put her in probably the most precarious position out of all of that, because you've got her with the headphones on. She's leaning in and focusing all of her energy on connecting to this spirit box. So she's like potentially connecting to other spirits and entities. And you're like, yeah, let's put the child in that chair. That's cool. No worries. This is exactly how The Exorcist occurs.
Right. No, to be fair though, we did all try it. It was just her turn to try. So nothing had really happened much when we all did it. It just randomly, of course, when the child who can see and hear things actually, yeah.
I can't tell if that's lucky or unlucky, but
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lila. Do you have anything else you want to share with us?
I don't think that I do.
All right. Well, I am really enjoying all of these ghost stories so far. And who's ready for s'more around this campfire?
I'm so ready. Kevin gets bad joke of the
Always ready.
day. Yay!
As it should be.
All right, as we go around the campfire, we are on our friend Callie. Welcome, Callie.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me to be on.
You are very welcome. I'm so excited.
Thank you for coming.
I'm going to warn you that as soon as we started this, my cat decided he wants to be a part of it, and he's running around the house like a crazy man. So if you hear something, I swear it's not demons.
Or is it?
Well, you never know.
So tell us about yourself, Callie.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. Several years ago, I was the resident paranormal investigator at the Stanley Hotel. I was responsible for setting up the ghost hunting program that they used to do at the hotel, as well as doing tours for VIPs and training some of the tour guides. Of course, while I was there, I had lots of ghostly experiences. But I've also traveled across the country and I've been to a lot of the more famous haunted locations that you may have heard of, and just really have had an exciting time doing ghost hunting and having some fun with it.
That's awesome. So, for those who don't know, the Stanley Hotel is located in Estes Park, Colorado. And can you tell us a little bit, maybe, because I know there's a big interest, anybody that lives in Colorado, and a lot of people come to Colorado to see the Stanley Hotel, mostly because of The Shining, but also because of the paranormal activity that's been recorded there. So, personally, since you were there so often, what was something you noticed consistently with the activity?
Well, the nice thing about having the opportunity to be at a place over and over and over again, which most ghost hunters and paranormal investigators don't get that opportunity. I got to know the spirits and I got to know the energy at the hotel. And I feel like I had more experiences there because they also got to know me and were comfortable and knew that, I was there for their best interest as well.
So you say they. How many would you say you were coming across?
Well, it is the Stanley Hotel. So Mr. and Mrs. Stanley regularly came through to different people. We had Lucy and Paul over in the concert hall. Let's see, every once in a while we had Lord Dunraven, who was supposedly, the women said that he liked to pinch their butts and, he was kind of ornery. I got a different sense of him, and as I worked there, he wanted me to clear up his story and let people know that that is not at all who he was, and people who were making that up, he was not happy with that. And then the hotel kind of felt like a portal. It's built on literally right on top of the mountain. If you go underneath it, there's no foundation to it. It's sitting right on the granite mountain, which brings all of that paranormal energy right up through the mountain into the hotel and then literally up the 2 staircases to the 4th floor. And so that's the reason I think why the 4th floor is the most haunted. So it's an interesting place, that's for sure.
Now, not including the Stanley Hotel, what would you say is your most memorable paranormal experience? Something that's just stuck with you through life?
It's hard to pick a top one, but probably I had an experience at the Liska Axe Murder House. Have you been there?
I have.
Did you have any experiences?
We did, yeah.
Awesome.
It was a beautiful home too.
It'll be interesting to hear if what I experienced is at all similar to what experiences you had. I've actually been there more than once, and this was my 3rd time going there. And I went with several friends. And so if you've been there, you know that when you walk up the stairs, there's a little hallway that goes from the parents' bedroom to the kids' bedroom. And then you open a door and there's a little closet. And then if you go through the closet, you're in the attic, right? Well, I am not a fan of the attic. There's something that I just don't like in the attic. It made me uncomfortable. And so at this particular time, I just decided I wasn't going to go in the attic. attic. Of course, everybody else that was with me, there were 5 other people, they decided that they were going to go in the attic and do a flashlight session, where you try to get them to turn on the flashlight, turn it on and off. And I decided that I would just stay in the hallway where I was still close to everybody and I could still see them and I could hear them, but I just wasn't inside the attic. So I'm standing in the hallway and all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. Well, that was pretty crazy because, there are times when you're more afraid of the living than you are of the dead, right? Who is coming up the stairs towards me? So I turned towards the stairs, and as I did, this rush of energy came through me. The best way that I can describe this to you is if you are cleaning a fish tank, and how in a fish tank you've got the water and then you've got all the rocks at the bottom, and you take that big scooper and you scoop it down in and you pull the rocks up and the water is coming out and you're taking the substance out of the water. That's what it felt like to me as this energy went through me. It took my substance with it as it went through me. I kind of leaned up against the wall and I sunk down and I was sitting in the hallway. And of course, everybody in the attic was still doing what they were doing. I wanted to say help, or I wanted to cry, but I couldn't even find tears to cry because it was so terrifying. When all of a sudden my friend Debbie turned and she looked and she noticed that something was not right with me. And she got up and she came out of the attic to check on me. And just as she did, the little flashlight that had been sitting on this, what do you call it, a sawhorse, it had been sitting there for a good 30 minutes while they were doing what they were doing. All of a sudden it spun sideways and flew off of the sawhorse. So I'm assuming that whatever walked up the stairs, walked through me, it went into the attic and then it affected what was happening in there. It was actually incredible. And the flashlight is on YouTube, by the way. the experience that happened, the flashlight part is on YouTube. So it was pretty crazy.
Wow.
Jeez, that is nuts.
I have to say, when I was there, I heard the footsteps.
You did?
We were in the main living room area, but we heard them coming down the stairs
Oh, interesting.
and kind of coming, like circling down and then going into the kitchen towards the stove.
Interesting. Yeah, there's something in there.
I have a question for you. Just to kind of tie it back to the Stanley Hotel. Like, was it the Stanley that brought you to investigating paranormal, or was it the paranormal that brought you to the Stanley?
Well, that's sort of a complicated question. It seems like it should be a simple one, but it's not. I've had experiences my whole life. Even as a kid, I had an imaginary friend, which now I realize probably wasn't an imaginary friend. I was actually, getting messages and hearing things from spirits. And that started when I was probably about 6 years old. Then when I was 18, my brother's best friend, who was like a brother to me, ended up committing suicide. He then continued to visit me and I would have communication with him. Of course, I was raised though in a Baptist home and we don't do ghosts in the Baptist world. And so, who do you talk to about stuff like that when things like that are happening? It was pretty terrifying. So I asked for it to go away. I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to be able to communicate. I didn't want to hear from voices either known or unknown. So I asked for it to go away. And everybody says that I shouldn't have been able to turn it off, but I was successful at just shutting it off and stopping it. Well, then I still continued to watch things like back in the day, there was Unsolved Mysteries, that always had a haunted portion, which was my favorite part. So I stayed interested in ghosts, but I was kind of scared of them after I asked for it to all go away. And then, of course, one day I was watching TV and Ghost Hunters came on. It was this new show that people are going out looking for ghosts. Are you kidding me? That's what terrified me as a kid. And I asked for it to go away. So I started watching Ghost Hunters. And then one day they were coming to the Stanley Hotel and I thought, ooh, how fun. I had become a fan of the show. So I thought, how fun. I should go meet these guys. And so I signed up. There was a whole weirdness that happened with that too, that literally led me there. It was the first time, even though I grew up in Colorado, it was my first time going to the Stanley Hotel. Walked in the lobby and literally I felt the energy of the hotel wrap its arms around me. In fact, I'm getting the tingles right now just thinking about it. It was like I came home, even though I had never been there before. And I got to know several people, people who were also interested in ghost hunting. And next thing I know, I had joined a team in Colorado that had been around for a while. And I was doing home investigations, was just fascinated by it. And then my husband at the time and I moved to Estes Park, again, out of the blue, this is the hotel, kind of sucking me in, I think. We moved to Estes Park and I worked for myself. And I thought, it would be kind of fun maybe, since I'm interested in ghosts again, to work at the hotel just as a tour guide, nothing big or fancy. So I called them, and 24 hours later, they had hired me, and I made my niche at the hotel. I was supposed to just be a tour guide, even though at the time I was terrified of public speaking. On my first tour, I had to go in the bathroom afterwards and cry because it was so awful, because I was so terrified of speaking in public, and doing something like this would have never been something I could have done. But the spirits of the Stanley Hotel just literally wrapped me up and said, we are going to make you successful at this. And next thing you know, I was doing radio shows for the hotel. I was doing the TV shows for the hotel, all of their media, all of their magazines, newspapers, anything. And then standing up in front of 200, 250 people at the big events and telling the stories of the Stanley Hotel. So it was what I was meant to do, at least for a time.
And that's actually how Lila and I met Callie. We went to the Stanley for her birthday or something, I can't remember. And we did one of the tours, and Callie was our tour guide. And then me being interested in it, I, had to ask a bunch of questions, and then just that's how we met.
Yep. And then you guys came to the event that I put on, the Feel the Energy event at the hotel, which was very cool.
Yes, that was amazing.
What are some other experiences that you've had that also stand out to you? Because it sounds like you have had a vast amount.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I probably should tell my most intense experience, and only because today is less than a week past the anniversary date of what happened, and it was at the Stanley Hotel. So it was January of 2010, and the hotel was not very busy. In fact, I think at the time we had maybe 6 guests in the entire hotel. And so I used to come and go whenever I wanted to at the hotel. I made my own schedule and set my own time period. And so I hadn't been to the hotel for a couple of days. And it was January 4th. And the assistant general manager called me, and she said, Callie, I just want to let you know before you hear it from in town, but we have had a suicide at the hotel. And of course, I got instantly sick to my stomach. And I said, okay, let me think about this. Let me process this, and I'll get back with you. So I took about an hour or so, and I called her back, and I said, I just want to let you know that I would like to come to the hotel, and I'd like to go in the room where it happened, because I would like to give this spirit, this person, the opportunity to clear out of that room if he's still there before people get wind of what's happened and start trying to ghost hunt and look for the spirit of this person who has literally just committed suicide at the hotel. And she said, okay, you can come over and do that. She said, but I want you to take Madame Vera with you. And Madame Vera is the resident psychic at the Stanley. So I said, okay, that's cool. That's fine. Even though she kind of freaks me out. She's so accurate about things. Anyway, so I arrived at the hotel, and I went to find Madame Vera. She had just arrived at the hotel as well. She was not aware of what had happened because she'd been gone over the holidays. So I said, I'd like to take you up to a room and have you experience something with me. And I don't want to tell you anything else about that until we get up there, because I didn't want to front load her with what I was taking her into. I'm sure I was acting weird. I had a knot in my stomach. I was scared. I also was sad. I was, it's not a great feeling, right, to know that someone has just committed suicide. So we're walking down the hallway, and we get towards the room, and all of a sudden she looked at me and she said, what the F is that? And I said, this is just beginning, but there is more. And I said, let's get to the room and let's see what you think. So I opened the door to the room, and when I walked into the room, of course the room was chaos because the police had been there. They had completely torn everything apart. The mattresses were gone, the bed, everything was moved away from the wall, and it was all in disarray because they had to do the investigation to see what had happened. When I walked in the room, of course I literally, at that point, I wanted to throw up. The energy inside the room was horrible. Well, Madame Vera walked in the room behind me, and as she did, she takes her hands and she puts them around her throat like she's choking herself. And she said, who hung themselves? Who choked themselves? What happened here? Well, the man had, what he had done is put a plastic bag over his head, wrapped a cord around it, and then ran helium up into the bag. And so she literally was feeling exactly what had happened. I went in the bathroom. I had to run some cold water and put it on my face. And as I came back out of the bathroom, I felt this whoosh of energy, and it went past me, like it almost blew my hair past as it went past me. And it made me dizzy, and I instantly had to sit down in the chair. Madame Vera opened the door to the window to kind of let all of the heaviness out. And then she said, "We need a Bible. We need a Bible." And I haven't been Baptist for a really long time, so that made me really uncomfortable. And I said, "Well, it's a hotel room, so there has to be a Bible in here somewhere." And she starts telling me, "We need Psalm 23, Psalm 23, find Psalm 23. And I, of course, looked up the 1 Corinthians, which was the love chapter, which is not at all what we needed. So we found the Psalm 23, opened it up, and that's the "Yea, though I walk through the valley of death" thing. Started reading it, and you could literally feel the energy of the room get lighter. The energy in the room was getting lighter. I was not getting lighter. I was so sick to my stomach. I was so dizzy. I did not feel well at all. So after it was all over, we left the room. We left the window open so it could clear out. And we went over next door to where the main offices are. And we asked the assistant general manager, we told the assistant general manager that we were finished and we had done what we needed to do. And she said, "I want to go back." She said, "I want to see the room. I haven't been in there yet. And I want to see, what's going on in there." She said, "Will you go back with me?" So I went back with her. And when we walked in the room, you could feel the difference. I, however, still was feeling off. Something was not right with me. I don't know how to explain it. It just didn't feel right. So we spent a few minutes in the room. As we walked back down the hallway, if you've been to the Stanley, I don't know if you've been there, but when you leave this room, you walk down the hallway. It's a long hallway. You take a right, and then you're headed towards the elevators. And as I'm headed towards the elevator, Leslie is the assistant general manager. She's on the left. I'm on the right. And in between the two of us, we all of a sudden heard this man's voice really loudly go, "Why?" And I looked at her and she looked at me. I mean, we were both trying to figure out if one of us had said that to the other. I feel like it was the man, or the energy of the man, trying to figure out what had happened, because there had to be confusion. That there had to be. Imagine how you must feel. So I left the hotel, and when I got home that night, I did a ghost hunt, by the way, later on that night, where someone caught a picture of a black hooded figure sitting in the balcony of the concert hall. So after the ghost hunt, I went home, and when I got home, I went to bed. I still was not feeling right. And the next thing I remember, I woke up and I was standing at the front door of my house, and I had the front door open. And as I woke up, usually like if you've sleepwalked, you wake up and you wonder, why am I standing here? Why am I at the fridge eating food or whatever, I knew why I was standing at the front door of my house instantly. As soon as I woke up, I knew that the reason I was standing in front of that open door was because I had to let him in. Well, from that point on, things went crazy in my house. I would wake up in the middle of the night, and there would be a man standing over my bed, leaning over, looking me in the face. One morning I woke up and I was tucked into the blankets like a burrito, like something had literally tucked the blankets underneath me. That day I went back to the hotel and I ran into Madame Vera, and she said, "Callie, you don't want to sleep with a ghost." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "This is not good, what's happening to you. You don't want to sleep with a ghost." That freaked me out. Then a few weeks later, I was getting ready to move. I saw a man in my house. A soup spoon flew across the kitchen one night. But as I was getting ready to move from this house, there was a ledge that was on those half ledges when you're on the stairway. And I had gone past that ledge every single day for the past 2 years that I had lived in the house. I had wiped off that ledge when I dusted it. And all of a sudden, I look at this ledge, and there is carved into the wood the words, "Get out." I feel like, I don't know if I was clear about the fact that I was moving at the time. So I had started packing all my boxes. So this "get out" was very strange to me. When I moved back to an old house that I owned in Elizabeth. All of the activity stopped. It ceased. It was over. It was done. Until I moved back up to Estes Park when I had sold my house, moved back up to Estes Park. When I moved into the next house, it all started again. And it started with me giving one of the ghost hunts at the Stanley, turning on the spirit box. And as soon as I turned on the spirit box, a voice came through and said, "There you are. I've missed you." And all of the stuff started again. there's so much more to the story that I can't tell it all in this period of time because there's so much more with what happened. But by the time it was over, this had haunted me, literally haunted me for about 5 years. I finally was able to clear out the energy and move on from it. And as soon as I did, Ghost Hunters wanted me to come do an interview about a follow-up on having been on, not Ghost Hunters, I'm sorry, Ghost Adventures, to do a follow-up on the Ghost Adventures episode I had done with them. And I decided at the time, this was now 5 years later, that I was going to tell the story about what had happened to me. And as soon as I decided I was going to tell the story, I got an email. And this email was the best friend of the man who had killed himself. He had tracked me down, sent me an email, wanted to hear my experiences, not knowing any of what I had experienced, by the way. It was only because he knew what my job had been at the hotel. He then told me the rest of the story. I got to learn about this man who had committed suicide. I got to hear what had happened before, the whole story, and then literally go to the Ghost Adventures filming and tell the story knowing the whole story. It was pretty crazy. I bet you guys weren't expecting that, were you?
Wow.
No. That's, yeah. Wow.
That's a pretty persistent haunting for the fact that you were able to move away, come back, and it immediately attaches and recognizes you. It's like, that's pretty strong. How were you able to clear that?
So I have a friend who lives in Alabama who's very much into not voodoo, but hoodoo, which is old folk art. Voodoo came from Jamaica and Haiti, but hoodoo was developed here in the United States in the South. And his grandmother was a hoodoo practitioner, and he helped me. He helped me with herbs and what he called whistling through the graveyard, which is learning to raise your vibration, because like energy attracts like energy. That's not woo-woo. That's not the stuff that we do. That's science. Like energy attracts like energy. Energy that is vibrating very quickly cannot coexist with energy that is a lower vibration and is vibrating very slowly. And so as a result, you have to raise your vibration, and those lower vibrations will eventually drop off. And so it was making sure that I was doing the right rituals, and those rituals were meant to bring my energy up. And by bringing my energy up, vibrating at a frequency that this low energy that had attached itself to me no longer felt at home, no longer felt like they belonged with me. And eventually one day it was just gone. There was no big anything there, I didn't feel anything, like it didn't feel it leave. Just one day it was gone, and it was just me making sure that I kept my vibration at a certain level. So no big secret, just hard work.
I think it's interesting that it went from being very aggressive towards you to, writing Get Out, even though you are in the process of moving, to then being like, I missed you, and attaching to you once again.
The thing is what I realized after it was all over and I was able to look back on it with more of a clear head, I don't think it was the man who committed suicide who attached himself to me. I think the whoosh that I felt was him leaving the room and his spirit being gone. If that makes anybody feel any better about this whole story, it was not him being stuck here or him being attached to me. What I believe happened is when I went in that room, my husband and I at the time, we had separated. We were getting a divorce. I was at probably the lowest point in my life. And I had no business walking into that room because I had not protected myself. I was at a very low vibration, and low vibrations attract low vibrations. And so as we offered the opportunity to this man's spirit to leave the room, that low vibration that had grabbed a hold of him and caused him to do what he did literally sucked onto me because I was also in that low vibration. And if you think about it, I'm really pretty lucky that it didn't drag me down into the same place that it drug him into, that I was able to fight that and resist that with the help of friends. So it was interesting.
I'm a firm believer that things do happen for a reason. There's no coincidence. So I do think that it's interesting. You insisted on going up there first, and you two being the first people to go in, and you walked in first. So it attached to you. And of all people, I mean, it could have been her first, it could have been anybody else, and continued that cycle, right, of connection and dragging down into that lower and lower vibration. But it was you, someone who has the support network and the tools and resources to help, get rid of something like that or not be taken in by that. And so I think it's interesting that you were the person that walked into that room first, and that you instinctively felt the need to go in there first before any other paranormal people were there. Because could you imagine, had investigations occurred before you were there, that would have potentially latched onto someone else and continued that cycle going, someone who is maybe doesn't have the same resources as you. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with the no coincidences thing. There was no coincidence because what happened to me and the experience that I had with that gave me an empathy for other people who are experiencing things who, oftentimes when people tell stories like this, people think they're crazy. It sounds kind of crazy what happened to me. And it gives me an empathy for people who are going through something similar, and to be able to be with people and teach people how to raise their vibration. What I want to do, my dream in life, is to teach people how to feel energy, because we all feel it. We just don't know that we feel it. And so you have to learn how to tune into it. And I want to teach people to do that by traveling around the world and taking people to the major energy centers where you can't help but feel energy.
I want to go with you to Machu Picchu.
Oh my God. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It has been really amazing hearing your stories and your experiences. And I want to have you back on to hear more if you're ever open to that.
Oh, of course.
I'd like to actually hear more about your experiences and perspectives on energy. I think that would be really awesome.
Yeah, it's my favorite subject. But that's when I then go kind of off the rails into some quantum physics. And sometimes people are like, oh no.
You should listen to some of our podcasts. I'm the same nerd. I'm just
Okay,
like,
good.
I'm the same way. I'm like, but guys, energy is real. It's science.
Yeah, it's not woo-woo. It's real. It's like you said, it's science. So that'd be cool. You guys just let me know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. It was good to see you.
Good to see you again, Callie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, that was Callie. Thank you so much, Callie, for coming on to our show. And now we have BJ. BJ, welcome.
Good to be here. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
I'm doing good. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, BJ.
All right. So let's get into it. What ghost stories do you have for us today?
All right. So, this happened about 2 years ago. I was with a friend. She invited me to this wine and cheese party, and I was like, okay. I mean, I've never been to a wine and cheese party. Let's do it. And so it was in the Wash Park area in Denver. I don't know if you guys know if any of you have been there. It's kind of fancy or older houses. A lot of older houses, but they're expensive. So the friends that lived there were renting it out. So I get in there, we, do meet and greet, start talking to everybody. And I just get this really, really weird feeling that there's some kind of presence there. I kind of go to the stairs, and then I look up at the top of the stairs, and I just get this weird feeling. And so I asked them, I said, hey, I got to go to the restroom. Where's the restroom? They're like, oh yeah, it's just at the top of the stairs. And so I head up there, go to the bathroom, come back down, and I look back up, and I just have this really weird feeling again. And like there's this little boy just standing at this top of the stairs, just looking at me. I don't know why I thought of just like a little boy, but that's just kind of what came to me. I had never met the people who lived there before, and so I went up to them and was like, your house is haunted, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like that was and I had, it was such a weird thing that I'd never been there before and just had that feeling. And the couple that lives there they're very friendly people. They're not, jerks or anything. And they said also that the ghost or whatever that's there isn't also, doesn't do anything to hurt them or to scare them, but they know that there's something there. Like stuff would move randomly, doors would open randomly, like all kinds of weird stuff like that. And anytime, and I've definitely had that feeling a few different times, but that one was the first one where I was just guessing. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely true. So
That's Insane. It's amazing how we can feel certain energies and put associations with them. For example, you felt the energy of a little boy at the top of the steps. You couldn't see him, but that's what you identified it as. And
Hmm.
I can't even begin to understand how our mind connects with our energy to make those correlations and provide those images.
Right. It's a really, really weird feeling. And it's not the first time, but this time it was such a weird thing that it happened so like right away. Like I'm kind of, I would say, a little bit of an empath in a lot of ways. Like I can feel other people's energies, and whenever I first meet somebody, I can kind of tell a little bit about them, whether it be good or bad or whatever, but then sometimes with spirits too. So I have seen a spirit too. Usually, this stuff kind of happens also, obviously, when it's older houses and things like that. The second thing that has happened to me has happened a couple of times. I'd say about maybe 3 times in my life. And this was from sleep paralysis. Do you guys, have any of you guys experienced that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. Consistently since childhood. It's awful. It's terrible.
Yeah. So sleep paralysis, I get it here. I've had it probably like 10 times in my life or more. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's not something that you wanna deal with. And the first few times, like it really freaked me out, and I was scared. I didn't know what to do, and I would shout. Now, when you have sleep paralysis, your mouth can't move, but you can, for me, I can feel my lungs and my voice just trying to gut wrench and try to get somebody's attention, but I could never get anybody's attention. And over time I've slowly been able to like wake myself up, because it is one of those things that either you go back to sleep or you wake up.
Mhm.
And I don't think I have a lot of control over that. Most of the time it feels like it's like 20-30 minutes just to get out of it, but it's a lot shorter than that, I think, just because when your body's not being able to move, you freak out a little bit. And so 10 minutes seems like a lot longer. But when I've had the sleep paralysis, the being or whatever that I witnessed has only happened a couple times, and it felt like when I opened my eyes, there was a being just right above me staring at me. And the best way I can describe it, what it looked like, was like, again, it was like a little, like maybe a child. And you guys know what like the 3D ultrasounds look like.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that. It was very much that color, like an orangish color, but just, yeah, just a being that was just kind of almost goopy. So, and just staring at me, like right above. Like if you guys have seen The Haunting of Hill House, very, very similar to that. And I think about that, I'm like, so what was that? Like, and it doesn't happen all the time. When I look into it, it's usually dark beings, something that's black or whatever. But this one was very much orangish and goopy, but you could tell it was a person. So it was just kind of weird. And when you can't move and you can't get anybody's attention, you're just kind of like, well, I guess this is just something I'm gonna have to deal with. And
Has to be terrifying.
yeah, you never really like it's not a welcome thing. It's never like, oh hey, like I can't move. This is great.
Woo! Like even knowing that I 99% of the time can pull myself out of it, I still don't want it. Like it's still
Mhm.
not. Although I've learned signs, I can usually tell when I'm going to have sleep paralysis before I even fall asleep. So
Huh.
I can feel my body starting to hum and vibrate as I fall asleep, even just a little bit. And when I feel that, I know I'm going to wake up with sleep paralysis. So
Hmm.
usually, if I can help it, if I still have enough control over like getting up and getting out of bed, I'll usually do that. If I start to feel that sensation, I'm like, okay, getting up, go to the bathroom, getting a drink of water, fully waking up, and then trying to go back to
Mhm.
sleep. It's really weird.
So, BJ, with the being that you were seeing, do you have an idea of what it is you're seeing? And a follow-up question is, do you know why you're seeing this child?
I have no idea what it is. I mean, I have seen another thing where it was a black like shadow that just walked in front of me and just kept walking. And that one was an adult. It wasn't like super big, but it was just like I don't know, 5'10", 5'11", something like that. But it was just a crazy thing because it happened when I was sleeping on the couch. And when I was sleeping on the couch, I looked down and could see like its feet moving like just past me. I feel like it could be a being. It could just be my mind messing with me. Because in the sleep paralysis thing, it's a little bit different than the other story. Like the other story, I definitely was awake and I could feel that there was something else there. In this situation, it was a combination of like, is this me or is this something else? So I do actually I forgot about this because it's been since college and it's been like 15 years now, which is crazy to think about. But I went to CU Boulder and I stayed in the dorms, and they're old buildings, and weird stuff happens. You hear stories about students who have committed suicide or hung themselves, all kinds of crazy stuff. And when I first moved in, because we did a summer program where we minorities would stay over the summer and basically practice college things and prepare for regular college. So we stayed in a dorm. This was in Libby Hall in at CU Boulder, and we were just talking about that kind of stuff. We're like, yeah, maybe there's hauntings, maybe there's stuff, but we were just talking. And then a couple days later, we saw footprints on the ceiling that led towards our beds. which was really sketchy, because it was like one of those things where it was kind of like glowing, but there was no like, we went up there and scratched the ceiling and we were like, yeah, see if somebody was messing around or whatever, or what if somebody put something on there, if it was like lemon juice or whatever, what people do to put stuff on there. But no, it wasn't any of that at all, and that freaked us out for sure. Because like it's one thing if footprints are leading away, but when they're coming towards you and they're up on the ceiling and they're coming right towards your bed, it's just a weird kind of sketchy thing that you're just like, what do you do with that? And so we ended up not sleeping that night, and just tried to just deal with it.
There is known for their psychedelics, and I'm just wondering, BJ, is there something that you're not admitting to?
So no, this was before all of that.
Oh,
that came
you
later.
went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, that was no. That would have made it worse. That would have made it much worse. Like, I was scared. I was dead sober, just like everybody else, because again, this was like our first week there, and like we obviously we would drink and stuff, but not like that day at all, that night even, which was kind of, because obviously if we got caught with alcohol or weed or anything, we could have gotten in trouble. We could have gotten out of the program, because it was a scholarship program and they had RAs there to make sure that we weren't getting into trouble. And so at least the very first few days, it was very much like strict.
Well, realistically, alcohol consumption has never led to hallucinations, so I doubt that even if you had been
Right.
drinking,
Yeah.
that would be attributed to the alcohol. Like, well, yeah, you drink Budweiser and you see glowing footprints on your ceiling.
Right.
I don't think that's fake. So
Yeah, and what was weird is that like it didn't happen, like it wasn't like one of those things where it happened like the night before or whatever. It was just kind of like a sudden thing, which was really weird. And we would hear things throughout the dorms and stuff, and that happened throughout CU. Like, I lived in a couple different dorms, and I was an RA in one of the dorms and everything, and there was some weird things that would happen. But I think that happens all over the US with older colleges and older buildings and stuff like that. But that was kind of like the first time I had really talked to people other than my family, like friends and stuff, about it, like seriously. And yeah, it was fun. It's scary but fun.
I think it's even scarier when there are people that experience it with you, because it validates what you're seeing. When you go through it alone, it's like you can talk yourself out of it, like, oh, that's just in my head, or maybe I misunderstood, misperceived. But when there's a whole group of people, like roommates, that all see the same thing, it's like, oh, damn it, you see it too? Oh, shit. Like, I don't know. It's even scarier. And I've grown up with a lot of unexplainable experiences that I've tried to logic away. And I'd have to say, even with that, I am not desensitized. And if I saw footprints going towards my bed on the ceiling, I would never sleep in that bed again. Like, that would not be just nope.
Yeah.
I would have packed up and moved my car.
Well, luckily it was just for like 6 weeks or something, so it wasn't that bad. And most of the time, you have roommates, so at least you're not alone, and so you can kind of deal with it. And we were tired all the time just because we were working so hard, and so it was kind of one of those things where like we were just too exhausted to worry. Like the first few nights we worried because we weren't hitting the books really hard, but then once we started hitting the books really hard, we were just like, we just got to go to sleep. We just have too much to do. So.
I went to CU Boulder too, and I lived out at Willville and never experienced anything. But those were like the newer dorms.
Mhm.
But you definitely, when you're on campus in some of those older buildings, you can definitely feel the energy is just off in some of those buildings. My degree often had my classes out at Hale. I don't know if you know that building. It was, yeah.
Yep.
So I was in Hale. I spent a lot of time there, and it was just like so uncomfortable because it always felt like something was watching me. And anytime I had like meetings with my counselors or professors, I would have to be there after hours, right? So not during the typical when there's a lot of people there, and going up to the second floor where all the offices are, it was just like, this is so uncomfortable and I feel so creeped out, and my stomach would just clench because my body's telling me get out of there. But it's like, but I have to be here because I paid for this degree. I need to be here. So if you, whatever is here, could just leave me alone for a moment, that would be awesome. The buildings on campus that really freaked me out. And even I had an honors class in the library, but the classes in the library are like way tucked up in there. And it was just like,
Right.
yep, here we go again. Not feeling so good. Like if y'all could just back off because it's really expensive to go to school, like that would be great.
Headphones everywhere. That's what I did. I just wore headphones. Anytime I was alone in those other buildings, I was always just listening to music. So I just had to do it that way. Because yeah, same thing. Quiet, too quiet.
Something.
Yeah.
And it's like it was quiet, like deadly quiet, but you felt like there was something else there, like right on you. And it's like,
just kind of just staring.
Yep, just right there. Like you see those awkward, I don't know, where someone just like walks up to someone's ear and is standing there just breathing. That's what that felt like. I'm like, this is just not cool. No, I appreciate you coming on and being really open about these things. I feel like because our world is still very resistant to a lot of these topics, and some people believe, but they don't want to openly admit they believe, or some people have experiences, but they don't want to talk about it because they feel embarrassed or judged. It takes a lot of courage to come onto a show and speak about these things. And it may feel easy for you, but it does take courage because oftentimes, there's that voice in the back of your head that's like, oh God, who's going to think I'm crazy? Are they going to think I'm crazy? People are going to judge me. You came on and you're just like, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I go through. This is what I believe. Like that is such a breath of fresh air. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. I mean, I don't mind talking about this stuff at all because again, life is short. Like why hide? Why hide behind things that you experience? Like life is supposed to be shared with each other and experienced with each other. And if weird shit happens, like I want to tell you about it. Like I want to hear what you have to say too, because like everybody experiences things differently with their own perspective, and that goes with filmmaking too. That's why there's so much great content out there, is because you can always tell something from a unique experience. It may be a similar story, but if you put your own spin on it, it's worth it. It's worth it to hear what other people have to say.
You're so great, BJ. Come back anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, BJ.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. It was fun.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you'd like to shout out to while we have you on? Any projects you're working on? Any websites? Just anything you'd like to promote?
In Search of Darkness. It's an 80s horror group that I'm a part of, and they're all like people that grew up with 80s horror, and it's a documentary. And it's a documentary based all the 80s horror, and it's amazing. They came out with a second one just recently, and actually I think In Search of Darkness, the first one, the poster that I have, I think it's on like it's either Peacock or Pluto, or it's on one of those streaming sites, so it's free. You guys can watch it.
Awesome.
But yeah, I highly recommend checking it out because they get into a lot of the practical effects and all the people behind that. Like Critters is one of my favorite movies, and they talk about all that kind of stuff. And it's 4 hours. It's like 4.5 hours long of just content, just everything. and they did a really good job. So
That sounds amazing.
right.
All right, our lovely listeners, thank you so much for sitting at our campfire. I'm your co-host, Kevin K. Daddy.
I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes, or even if you have a story of your own that you want to tell us, email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com or check us out on our social media. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow us on our social media and hit that follow button. You don't want to miss a crazy thing.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.